Hi, guys. Give myself get the hair out of my face there. So before we get started today, before we talk about what's on the inside of our head, I'm considering cutting my hair short again, just for the summer, because it's just so much upkeep all the time. So you guys can all give me your opinion on that. And then I could have like August and September to grow it back out again. Look what I got. A guy that used to produce Behind Closed Doors with me, Eric Schatz. They did these. They're like a circular material, it's sewn right here. But you take it like this and scrunch it, and then you can put it around your neck, instead of the blue mask that I've been using. And then whenever you need to, you just kind of put it up like that. It's kind of cool. Thanks, Eric Schatz, if you're out there. Let's see who's with us today before I get started. Okay, it's hump day. Remember, it's Wednesday. Donna Lynn, looking forward to another great day. Me too. Jeanette Persons, I've never thought that we used our entire capacity of our brain, which I think is true. So I always wonder, and that's a question I have for Dr. Daniel Amen tomorrow. So I always wonder what its true capability is. Ooh, we could probably ask Dr. Mike Dow also. Brain health is essential, anxiously awaiting the topic today. This is good, isn't it, that we're spending the whole week talking about brain health? It's so important. Marion Lowry, wonderful Wednesday from Eastern Texas. Eastern Connecticut. It's my state. It's beautiful here in Connecticut right now. Really beautiful. Donna Lynn, happy Wednesday. Beth, is it Malik? I think it's Malik or Malik from Naperville, Illinois. Anna Mae Foley, you're coming to us from Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Good topic, brain health. I hope we can learn what causes sugar cravings. That's what we're going to talk about today and what can be done about it. Jeanette Persons from Lisbon, North Dakota. Good to have you with us. Tammy Lewis. Yep, hump day. Rebecca Franick and Christine Kraling from down the Pennsylvania area. Cindy, Linda, you're from up in Canada. Linda Robert. Karen, no haircut. Come on, you guys. There's so much upkeep to this hairstyle. Hey, Eris Kaplan, you're joining us from Tel Aviv. Shalom from Tel Aviv. We always like to have you with us because it's probably dinner time for you over there, right? Dinner time or somewhere around that. Jan Hoffman, always looking forward to these. All right, so listen, here, Linda Griffin Thomas. Greetings. Your hair? Go for it. It's just hair. It'll grow back. I'm letting my previously natural red hair now grow out to its natural color. Well, a lot of us have had to do this because we don't have our hairdressers around to do things. Hi, Anita Anderson from Tucson, Arizona. Susan Porat, Cindy Abood, present. Good for you. Angela Quattararo. I'm probably really butchering that, from Tampa, Florida. Todd Weeks from Fitchburg, Massachusetts. Sandra Hayes from Tupelo, Missouri. Okay, you guys, I got to get going here. All right, I'll try to say hello to the rest of you. Yes, you say, Eris, you say it's 8 p.m. in Tel Aviv. All right. Well, good evening to you. I hope you had a nice dinner. So listen. It is what? It's hump day, as a few of you have said. It is Wednesday, June 10th. You know that every day I always look up to find out what national holiday we are celebrating in this country. And I don't know how all these things got on the list. But amazingly, there's hardly anything on the list today. Really, the only thing on the list is National Iced Tea Day. Now, I don't know about you, but I love iced tea. The most important thing to me about iced tea is that is what got me to give up drinking Diet Coke. I never was really a drinker of Coca-Cola, but I consumed way too much Diet Coke, and I knew it. And so iced tea is really what got me off of it. In the beginning, I added a lot of, artificial sweetener, but then I've kind of just come off of that. I've got all different kinds of flavors of iced tea. So if you still are drinking sodas and diet sodas, because there's other reasons about diet soda, that phosphorus that's in it, that you shouldn't be drinking it. Let National Iced Tea Day inspire you to get off those soft drinks. All right. Because today we're going to talk about sugar. So that we all know what we're doing to ourselves and our bodies and our brains when we consume sugar. And for that discussion, I invited Dr. Mike Dow to join us. He is a psychotherapist. You've seen him on God knows how many different programs. He's hosted so many different programs on so many different networks. It's crazy. But he's also the go-to expert on shows like Dr. Oz and the doctors talking about brain health and addiction and mental illness and relationships and, of course, sugar. But he's also a New York Times bestselling author of a bunch of books like The Brain Fog Fix, Healing the Broken Brain, Diet Rehab, The Subconscious Brain Can Change Your Life, and his latest, this is a great title, The Sugar Brain Fix, the 28-day plan to quit craving the foods that are shrinking your brain and expanding your waistline. Now, let me tell you, as soon as I heard that title, I said, I've got to have this guy on. So I think we're really going to enjoy all the information that we learned today. So let's welcome Dr. Mike Dow.
Hi there, Joan. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great having you here. I've enjoyed your books. I've read them sometimes more than once. So listen, I want to talk. Everybody's interested in talking about brain health. I mean, you got a group here of, primarily the audience is women over 45, but we've got guys on here too, from all over the country, all over the world. Right. And everybody knows about we need to temp down our sugar consumption. But before I ask you about that, I hope it's okay. I want to ask you about something I read when they were talking about not only really your books, but your career.
Of course.
Inspired by his brother, who suffered a massive stroke when he was just 10 years old.
Yeah.
Dr. Mike has made it his personal mission to help others in their quest for health and happiness. Tell me about that. And it obviously did have a very big impact on you.
It sure did, Joan. I think all of us have a personal story and something that just stuck with us. And for me, it was my brother's major stroke at the age of 10. I was in high school. He later, after the stroke, was diagnosed with a very rare brain disease called Moya disease, which sometimes leads to strokes in children. So, what was really amazing in seeing my brother recover, and he had, by the way, a massive stroke. So after the stroke, he was left unable to speak, walk. He had to learn how to do all of those things again. And, it's just amazing because I have to tell you that at the time we had one doctor who told us, the stroke was too massive. You're just going to have to put him into a nursing home for the rest of his life, assisted living. There's just really no hope that he could ever live independently. Well, I can tell you today that my brother is living independently.
I was wondering, what great news.
Yeah. And so all of these things, his ability to walk again, to defy the odds, really taught me something about the brain. As you were reading the list of my books, most of them have the word brain in the title because I'm so fascinated by the power of the human brain. And one thing that has really changed in science is that we used to think that the brain was just sort of, once you hit adulthood, 25, the brain is done developing, and that's all of the brain that you're ever going to have, and it just kind of goes downhill from there. Well, that's not really true anymore. We know that there's something called neuroplasticity, in that even adults can grow these new brain cells. And for my brother, it was the rewiring and the growth of his brain that allowed him to lead this happy, healthy life. And I saw all of the things that he was doing, like taking massive doses of omega-3s, which I'm sure we're going to get into today, because, those omega-3s are like the Play-Doh for your brain to actually build itself back up. And it was sort of that combination between hope, so something psychological, something in his diet, omega-3s, and then these therapies, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. And by the way, for all of us, life is our therapy. So it's use it or lose it, and use it and improve it. So, I'm blown away. I think it's number one, our most important organ. And it's something that no matter, some of these people who are 35, 45, or 65, you're never too young or you're never too old to actually care about the health of your brain.
Well, it was interesting when I was doing all my research, to write my book, Why Did I Come Into This Room? Obviously, yeah. I too, reason for a shameless book plug.
Yes.
that's why I called it, Why Did I Come Into This Room? Because I think of all the different things that we go through, and specifically women, because we go through it in a different way than men because of the estrogen and the decline of estrogen.
Yes.
But that also is affecting our brain. It's affecting how we see ourselves and therefore the life choices that we make. But, I was interested in learning when the brain starts. I think it's at 2 months in utero, a couple of weeks in utero. But by the time the child is born, by the time they're a toddler, their brain is like 80% the size that it's going to be as an adult. But that being said, we now know that you don't complete all of the development of the brain until you're in your 30s, which of course accounts for some of the really stupid things, I guess, that we do in our teens.
That's right. Yeah.
But as that brain is developing, what is, like, you talk a lot about the sugar brain. What does a sugar brain feel like? I guess is where I'm going to start. What is it?
So, that's a great question. And when you were reading the subtitle of my book and stop eating the foods that are shrinking your brain, that's actually true. According to this landmark study that was just published a few years ago, sugar actually shrinks our brain. And it shrinks the part of the brain, in particular the hippocampus, that is really subject to either decline and shrinkage as we get older, or conversely, it's the part where most of the neurogenesis, the birth of new brain cells, occur in adults. So it's really the most malleable part of the brain. And we know that people in this study, it was a long-term study using brain scans over the course of years, a really large sample size, so the data was really good. And when you shrink that hippocampus, how are you going to feel? Well, we know that people who have major depression have a shrunken hippocampus, so you're probably going to feel a little blue and moody, and you're going to have those mood roller coasters, depression, anxiety. And then guess what happens when you have a little bit of depression? You turn to that freezer and you think, ice cream, and that's going to give you a little surge of serotonin in the short term, but of course then in the long term it's shrinking your brain. We know that this part of the brain, speaking of your book, why did I go into this room? We know that dementia is also associated with a shrunken hippocampus, so you're probably going to feel foggy. Now, people sometimes ask, well, what is, those seem like separate issues. How would feeling foggy and mild cognitive impairment or dementia or Alzheimer's, how does that relate to my eating behaviors? Well, this is interesting because we know that people who have a foggy memory actually will eat. So, in studies with in people with dementia, they will eat more often and they will eat more food because your brain isn't encoding the memories of every single meal. So it's almost like, oh, I didn't actually eat. At least that's what your brain is thinking because you have that chunk of the campus. And then so you're going to eat more often and more food. So it's just so interesting to me that the way that we feel sort of then also sets us up for this vicious cycle, right? Because, by the way, you're also going to feel impulsive and stuck. So we know that people with impulse control disorders, they tend to have a shrunken hippocampus, and it's harder to make behavioral change. So now it's sort of this vicious cycle. So the sugar, and also, we can also talk about the high omega-6 fats. That was also shown in the study.
I want to ask about that.
Yeah, that's the combination in the American diet that has been associated with the shrunken brain. So then you either feel, or maybe all of these things, you feel impulsive, you feel stuck, you feel blue, you feel foggy, and then you're caught in that vicious cycle, setting yourself up for more brain shrinkage.
We have a question here, but first I want to remind everyone, in case you forgot from your 8th grade or your 11th grade class in science, the hippocampus is that part of the brain that that holds all of our memories and that creates memories. And that is, when you hear about brain shrinkage, that is the only part. It's not like the whole brain is shrinking down. It is that hippocampus. But that's the part we really need to retain our cognitive thinking and to stay sharp. Obviously, a sugar consumer, I can say that to you, Jill Hockney, because I know you. She's from up in Maine. Jill Hockney is saying, can you reverse the sugar damage?
That is the great news, yes, because again, this is the part of the brain that is associated with neurogenesis. There are so many things that you can do to regrow the brain, just like my brother and his stroke, and all of the ways that he regrew his brain. All of us who have eaten the American diet, I grew up mostly in Ohio, eating a very American diet, lots of soda. I mean, I was drinking 8, full sugar sodas a day. And then I switched over to diet, and then I was drinking 8 of those a day.
Yeah.
And just the havoc that has on our brain, whether it's diet or regular soda.
You
And
heard that I did. I went through the same thing.
Yeah. And I think a lot of Americans have. And I think it's, we all know that, okay, sure, diabetes and weight gain, but I think when you actually add this other factor, that's actually shrinking your brain, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, whoa, maybe I actually do want to do something about this to regrow my brain. And now, especially in the age of COVID, it's so interesting. We're looking at diabetes, and a lot of the recommendations in my book can actually bring your blood sugar down. So if you're heading towards that diabetes spectrum, you can sort of reverse that through some of the practices like intermittent fasting, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to regrow your brain. And we can talk about why. But it's so interesting because health is so complex. There are so many factors. And I think people with COVID are starting to realize that this inflammatory cascade can be related to blood sugar spikage. And, why do they call dementia diabetes type 3? Well, when you're spiking your blood sugar all the time, you're setting yourself up. You are drastically increasing your risk of developing dementia later in life. So, all of these things are so interconnected, and I'm so glad that people are starting to really talk about it, because there's so much that we can do.
Well, I mean, I have a million questions for you. But I also do think that as a society, there's just this huge bubble of the population are boomers.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of everybody out there today are kind of like with me, we're boomers, and us boomers, there's a saying that it's not so interesting to see how aging changes boomers, but how boomers are going to change aging.
I love that.
I think we're going to change it because we want to hold on to our cognitive thinking, because we want to live fully engaged lives for longer, because we know we're going to live longer.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think you're really right that we all think about sugar in terms of weight gain and in terms of, diabetes. But of course, I did a whole big program with the diabetes division, the CDC, and I think it's 96 million Americans have pre-diabetes.
That's right.
And 90% of them are unaware of it.
That's right.
They don't realize that they're teetering. And once you go over that, I mean, then you got type 2 diabetes. Not that you can't change your ways and undo that. But I know that maybe it was part of the study you're talking about. They scanned people's brains after consuming 2 different milkshakes. One was high in fat, one was high in sugar. So tell us what they found, and then tell us what they found.
So we know that sugar and carbohydrates like flour increase serotonin in your brain. That's your main feel-good downer. It makes you feel happy and peaceful. Fat increases dopamine in the brain. That's your main feel-good upper, right? So you're going to feel happy and excited. But the question here, and I think the study sort of answered this question, what's the thing that really hooks us? And they found that sugar was lighting up the pleasure centers more than the all-fat milkshake. And then we look at some of the other research, and some other research in my book, looking at America in general. We Americans are the number 1 consumer by far of sugar. We're eating hundreds of calories a day of added sugar. And when we look at all other countries, they don't eat nearly as much as us. And by the way, we are not the number 1 consumer of fat. There are other countries that eat more fat than us. So, that raises the question, is it the constant spiking of blood sugar that is the primary problem, the thing that gets Americans hooked, the thing that we love the most? I think so, because in a lot of ways, fat probably, these high, if it's a healthy high fat diet, keto is the rage right now. There are some people, by the way, who I really have a problem with going on a strict keto diet because of some genes related to Alzheimer's, the ApoE gene. So if you're the one in approximately 10 people with an ApoE4, or sometimes even with the opposite, the ApoE2, unless you've had genetic testing, I really recommend that people don't go on strict keto because of the way that can cause havoc in the brain. But we do know that the sugar is the thing that really hooks us and then keeps us coming back for more. And it's in everything. It's like I was trying to cook a organic teriyaki chicken at home, and I was looking at all of the bottles, and it's like, oh, sugar. So I found the one that was this very healthy one with no sugar. But it's even when you're eating protein in America, there's sugar in it. You have the vegetable, and it has some sort of sugar in it to make it taste better. It's like we're eating sugar in every food group now.
I want to talk about that because I remember I went to Whole Foods, and even in Whole Foods, I would look at a whole, big area of ketchups or of salad dressings and everything. I mean, everything has sugar. And if it's low fat, which we've all been on this low fat thing in America, like
Yeah.
low fat, but most of those low fat foods add sugar. So
That's
you'll
right.
still like it,
That's
right?
what they do. That's right. Even in milk, when you take whole milk, and I actually recommend organic whole milk, because
Yeah.
when you take the fat out of that milk, the sugar content goes up. So skim milk will spike your blood sugar more than whole milk, right? So it's
Wait, say that one more time.
so when they take the fat out of whole milk and they make whole milk into skim milk, the sugar content goes up if you look at the nutritional label. So skim milk will spike your blood sugar more than whole milk or cream will, which is why, in my book, when I recommend, in week 1, you skip 1 meal, week 2, 2 meals, week 3, 3 meals, week 4, 4 meals. The thing that you can have is black coffee, or for you, iced tea that's unsweetened. And you can have up to a tablespoon of cream, but not milk, because you can stay in that fasted state. You can stay with that blood sugar at 0 with a little bit of cream, but that's not true for milk because of the way milk actually spikes your blood sugar. To your point, when they take fat out of something and they make something low fat, it's usually high sugar. Right. So another reason why we want to eat whole natural foods that haven't been altered in some way, because they're playing with the macronutrients, the fat versus the protein versus the sugar content, the carbohydrates. So, it's just so fascinating that we're learning so much, and that fasting. And then you also, in my program, do some fasted workouts, meaning you work out while your blood sugar is at 0, so that your body can, number one, increase BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which has been called miracle grow for the brain, to sort of regrow that hippocampus. And also, all of the excess sugar that all of us have consumed, it's stored as glycogen. So we want to release the glycogen stores, and then when those get to empty, then your body is forced to turn to the stored body fat for fuel, instead of just burning sugar all day long. When you are on that elliptical trainer for an hour, you can make that workout so much more effective with these little strategies.
All right, so I'm having a hard time even keeping up with all the questions, because somebody's talking about here, what's a good sugar substitute? Can you ask the doctor, please, is stevia a good substitute for sugar? Does it affect our brain?
Stevia is a fantastic sugar substitute. It's the one that I recommend in my book. It keeps your blood sugar at 0. It's not associated with health risks, especially, whether my grandma used to love the red packets. There are the blue packets and there are the yellow packets. And now even at Starbucks, they have the green packets, which are the stevia. You want to go for the green, because all of the other 3 artificial sweeteners, they can create something called dysbiosis, meaning that they can actually kill all of the good gut bacteria. We know that good gut bacteria is also associated with a healthy blood sugar response, a healthy immune response. There are so many diseases, this inflammatory cascade that people are talking about with COVID now. Our gut is our primary source of our immune system. 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So you don't want to destroy your gut. It can have, it leads, it's like the first domino that goes and affects all of these other diseases and processes in your body. So you really don't want to destroy your good gut bacteria with artificial sweeteners. But yes, stevia is the one to go for.
Here's Linda Pella that says, I'm throwing out my candy stash right now. And here's Gayla saying, I still want to know more about if we can actually regrow our brain cells, or did I miss it? So let's just talk a little bit more about neurogenesis, because that's what we're talking about. And we've talked about it before on this show, about challenging your brain, but mostly cardio and walking and running, how that sends all the oxygen and the nutrients up to your brain to create new neurons. And those, if I'm correct, are more adept at connecting to the main system than those that we might create doing a crossword puzzle or something, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, all of these activities, so, doing a crossword puzzle, playing board games, all of these activities that are challenging our brain are great. but exercise really is sort of the king of
Yeah.
all of those things. So, we know that just by walking a mile a day or a couple miles, that can really cut your dementia risk sometimes in half. So it is
Did you
the
hear that, everyone? Did you hear what he just said? Getting out and walking every day can cut your dementia risk in half.
Isn't that crazy?
That is definitely something to really inspire them to get that walking in.
Yeah, and if you're combining that with intermittent fasting and you're skipping one meal a day in week one, you just skip that breakfast and that's when you take your walk. Now you're actually doing all of those things, but you're also increasing BDNF because you're doing what we call that fasted state workout, which is one of the best ways, again, to increase that BDNF, that miracle growth for the brain, to make it even more effective, and also, again, shred that belly fat. So, I talk
Wait
about—
a second, belly fat. That's what we all want to know about shedding the belly fat.
Yeah.
Keep
So
on that.
when you take all of the sugar, and by the way, I think somebody on your team, they were asking about flour. Well, flour, it's metabolized into sugar in your body. It spikes your blood sugar just as much. So, when you take something like sugar, and by the way, it's so interesting, sugar, because sugar used to be a treat. Sugar used to be extracted in a very expensive way, mostly in these tropical areas like India. And it was very, very, very expensive. And then they realized, the scientists discovered that there was another way to extract sugar. And now sugar isn't like, I think of sugar, and it, 100 or 200 years ago, sugar was sort of like having truffle oil. Truffle oil is very expensive. It's a little treat. You're going to have it. You're not going to have truffle oil every day. It's very expensive. You're going to have it at a really expensive restaurant, once every few months, let's say. And that's what sugar was. It was like this little treat it was like gold. It was so expensive. Now sugar is in everything. And what's so interesting, sugar is correlated when we think about the taste buds that we have: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami on our tongue. Most of the sweet taste receptors are at the tip of our tongue. And when we have to go back to an evolutionary point of view and a scientific point of view. Sugar and sweetness in nature, when you don't extract it artificially as humans do and put it into other things, the sweetness of something, usually a whole fruit, is correlated with its ripeness, and ripeness is associated with a higher level of vitamins. So that is nature's way of saying, I want to protect you. The other way that protects us in nature is that foods that have, before refrigeration, again, going back a couple hundred years, when a food turned rancid, it was no longer sweet. So that is nature's way of saying, ooh, this isn't sweet anymore. Don't have that. That's going to be poison to you. We now, and modern food companies, and it's not just them, because it's our buying habits too. We have to vote with our dollars. They have taken that evolutionary system, that science-based system that we have to keep us healthy. That ripe orange is going to have more vitamin C than an orange that's not ripe. And we've turned it on its head, so that instead of the sweetest foods being associated with health and wellness and lack of disease, it's now associated with dementia, diabetes, early death,
Obesity.
cancer, obesity, all of those things. So it's like, it's a whole new way of thinking about what sugar is.
And I wanted to point out, when we think of sugar, as you say, we think of candy and fruit juice or cake frosting or high fructose syrup. But you state very clearly in your book that every time you say sugar, that you are talking, and you list a whole bunch of them. But I want to just point out, because this will, I think, make my point. 3 items that kind of surprised me: quinoa, rice, and grains.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think of those foods as maybe savory, but I don't necessarily think of them as sweet. Explain why those foods are on the sugar list.
Yeah, so it's really all about what it does to your blood sugar. So, we know that flour, grains, even these pseudo grains like quinoa, they really are going to spike your blood sugar. And, I'm not saying that you can't have these foods ever, but, I would much rather you get your amino acids and your micronutrients from nutrient dense food. So you're going to get way
Right.
more food, goodness in your body by having, on my programs, at least 7 servings of vegetables and whole fruits every day. Those are going to keep your blood sugar very low because whole fruits have the fiber intact. That mitigates the blood sugar response. These vegetables that are just so nutrient dense and low in calories, and they fill you up because you can obviously have, cups and cups of spinach or romaine lettuce or kale, and that signals satiety in your stomach. And with all of the fiber, all of the wonderful things that it's doing. Grains, on the other hand, and flour and sugar, when we look at the blood sugar response, blood sugar rises and then insulin rises after your blood sugar rises to get that energy into your cells. When we have carbs all day long, I'm not saying carbs are the enemy, because I certainly, unlike some other diets like, keto and paleo that actually exclude a lot of fruits,
Yeah.
I say that all whole fruits are good because, we know that they're associated with, these antioxidants that can prevent disease. But I would much rather you spike your blood sugar with a whole apple or organic blueberries, a power fruit for the brain, than having, a bunch of grains. And we Americans, again, looking at these studies, we are consuming we're consuming 5-10 times more sugar and other carbohydrates than other societies. And then we look at, who has the most problem with obesity? America, Americans. So, it's just so interesting that when you start to take these out, that is the most rapid way to bring your blood sugar down, to burn the belly fat, and to also increase neurogenesis.
What about brown rice?
Same thing. All of these
Still a
foods,
grain?
it's when I see a cereal box, let's be honest, cereal is not the best breakfast. And when I see these health claims like, oh, may lower cholesterol, I would love for people to have more fiber in the form of vegetables to lower their cholesterol, to mitigate their the fats in their body. But having a, quote, cereal made with whole grains, that is going to spike your blood sugar so high. And if you were trying to lose weight, I remember back in the day, my mom and I actually used to love Special K, and it was like this, oh, you're going to lose so much weight on Special K. No, it's a terrible diet food. I would much rather people have some organic eggs in the morning, some whole organic blueberries. And when I speak of animal products, I think we need to be eating probably a little bit less of animal products. And when you do eat them, make sure they're pasture raised or organic, because those have more omega-3s than the factory farmed conventional varieties. And again, it wasn't just sugar, it was the high omega-6 foods that was correlated with this brain shrinkage. So we want to increase our omega-3s, mainly in the form of seafood. If you don't eat meat, then you get them in walnuts, flaxseed, these really great anti-inflammatory omega-3s. Bring those up and bring the inflammatory omega-6s down. So it's a twofold approach.
So I want to answer a couple of people here. A number of you are asking for the name of the book again, and Nicole in my office, if you would just put it up on the screen. You're asking if this is going to be on YouTube. Yes, it is going to be on YouTube. And the name of the book again is The Sugar Brain Fix by Dr. Mike Dow, the 28-day plan to quit craving the foods that are shrinking your brain and expanding your waistline. As we continue on with Dr. Mike, as everybody calls him, you have this 28-day plan, but I think it's overwhelming to people. But by the way, I think I went on a 21-day, which I've talked about here in it was Brad Davidson 21-day stark naked metabolic reset, which is very similar to what you're discussing. And he said anyone can do anything for 21 days, and the same thing for 28 days. But it's an idea of people feel that means that it's going to be overwhelming because they're going to be testing their willpower at every corner. Because your brain is actually, am I right, addicted to the sugar?
Absolutely.
That is correct.
Yes, okay. It is. So you are going to go through
an addiction.
Yes. Because of the ways, again, sugar and flour and grains spiking serotonin, fats spiking dopamine. So what that does, all of these pleasure centers in your brain, when you eat these foods, those neurotransmitters go up. And when you try to go cold turkey, you're going to experience withdrawal, just like you may experience when you try to cut caffeine out of your diet. those pleasure centers are overwhelming. There's another part of the brain, the hypothalamus, that is supposed to be the part of the brain that signals, okay, start and stop eating. But when you overwhelm that part of the brain, that's actually sort of more cued into your physical hunger. With the pleasure centers, you just want to eat all the time. You are eating to feel a certain way, right? Just like a drug, remember, dopamine and serotonin, those are released when you eat these addictive foods. Same neurotransmitters that are released in cocaine use and the street drug ecstasy or Molly, that's dopamine and serotonin. So, same neurotransmitters, same response. No wonder they're addictive, right?
Wow.
So, now, unlike cocaine, probably more similar to alcohol, it's okay to have these foods maybe once or twice a day, just like it's okay for women to have a glass of wine a night and for men to have two, according to research. So it's not like cocaine addiction where it's an all or nothing. You can never have that. It is finding this really easy way. And I use a program in my book called Gradual Detox. So in weeks 1 and 2, you're not going to cut anything out of your diet. And I found in my experimentation with the people that I work with and over the years and in my practice and research, that when you set people up for success in this way, I sort of model it in a lot of ways to nicotine withdrawal. What do you do if you're trying to quit cigarettes? Before you even stop, you give yourself nicotine replacement therapy.
Right, the nicotine patch, yeah.
Yeah, so that nicotine patch is going to increase dopamine levels so that when you take the cigarette away and your dopamine levels go down, you're not going to notice it. By the same token, what I do in my book, I help you to understand and put together the foods, the healthy foods that create serotonin and dopamine in your body naturally without bad fats and sugar.
Like,
So when you have all of these healthy amino acids, tyrosine and tryptophan, namely.
I know tryptophan's in turkey, right?
Yeah, tryptophan's in turkey, tryptophan's in bananas. It's in a lot of, most of the proteins you're going to eat are going to have some tryptophan. But here's the part that most Americans are lacking. Your body, to convert those amino acids into feel-good serotonin and dopamine, which, by the way, about 90% of your serotonin made in your gut, about half of your dopamine made in your gut. So, yes, isn't that fascinating?
I always think of that being made in the brain.
No, it sort of travels to the brain, originating in the gut. And there's this two-way feedback loop between your brain and your gut, and we know that the gut is actually sort of your second brain in a lot of ways. And so, but your body needs what we call cofactors. So these are vitamin and mineral activators of those amino acids to convert the tryptophan or the tyrosine into serotonin and dopamine. You need a lot of vitamin C, you need a lot of B vitamins, you need copper, you need iron. So those vitamins are found mostly in leafy greens, vegetables, whole fruits. So when you eat this healthy combination, why do I have people eat 7 servings of whole fruits and vegetables a day? It's so that you're getting all those vitamins to take the amino acids and convert them into serotonin and dopamine. That becomes like your nicotine patch. So you're getting the serotonin and dopamine in another way, so that then in weeks 3 and 4, when you start to decrease the sugar and the bad fats, the omega-6s, you're not going to notice it because your body has already been manufacturing so much so many of those feel-good neurotransmitters, the serotonin and the dopamine, through the healthier foods, that you're not going to go into withdrawal.
Is that kind of like you need vitamin D in order for calcium to be absorbed in your body?
Yeah, exactly. So the synergistic effect of so many vitamins, calcium and vitamin D, sometimes it's heat. So like when you take a tomato and you expose it to heat, that actually makes the lycopene more effective. And yes, taking those amino acids.
Like fake or roasted tomato, you get more it activates nutrients. Is that what you just?
Yeah, there are a lot of vegetables where the antioxidants go down, but tomato is one. Lycopene actually gets more potent. So we're using that synergistic quality of the amino acids plus the vitamins to really make your own feel-good chemicals. And it's why, my program, I call it the Ketiterranean. It's a little bit of keto, but mostly Mediterranean equals Ketiterranean. We know that the Mediterranean diet in a landmark study was proven not just to prevent depression, it actually treats people with major depression. That some people just following the Mediterranean diet diagnosed with major depressive disorder went into remission after following this diet. And why is that? Well, the Mediterranean diet, all of these things that I'm having you eat, it reduces inflammation. It helps your body to naturally make these neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine. So no wonder we can treat depression with just diet. And that's sort of what we're doing here, but we're targeting that brain shrinkage. We want to grow that brain, which, by the way, will also treat mood disorders in some people, just like the research shows. But I just think it's so fascinating that food is indeed medicine.
Yeah, I've got people here, Ginger Powers, that says, how do you do this with teenagers in your house? It is hard. But a lot of my teenagers are now on this real kick. I've got 17-year-old twins. They turned 17 today. And a lot of you have said, happy birthday. Thank you, Sue Jeffries. Happy birthday to your good-looking twins. They're 17 today, boy, girl. And then I have 15-year-old twins, boy, girl. They're 15 and just finished their freshman year. The boys are really wanting to clean up their diet and take the summer to really get in shape, because they're going one into football, one into soccer. The girls are not only wanting to be ready for their sports, but they just want to be lean.
Yeah.
And they've been all following this fabulous nutrient dense kind of diet, leaving out a lot of the bad carbs and filling their plates with vegetables. And I got to tell you, they've shed pounds, and I think my husband's going to want to homeschool them. They look smoking hot.
I love it.
But we also have people here asking, Linda Rita, if your gut is the center of your body's making of serotonin and dopamine, then is taking probiotics helpful to that? And if helpful, how much is good, or how much is perhaps too much?
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer in probiotics as well. So I also talk about that in my book. In my book, Heal Your Drain Brain, I actually collaborated with a chef who specializes in cultured foods. So learning how to create probiotics in foods that you wouldn't think of, like salsa or vegetables. So yes, the other way, so it's not just the amino acids and the vitamins, but probably the secondary way that you can also help your gut to make more serotonin and dopamine is by increasing your intake of probiotics in the form of kefir or, miso, or, some of these, kimchi, these healthy foods, and, or supplementing with probiotics. How much is too much? Most people can follow the label. But if you have a gut, if you've done any sort of GI testing, there are different forms of dysbiosis. So some people don't, some people have too many bad bacteria. Some people just don't have enough good bacteria, sometimes both. So a lot of times the exact amount that is going to be helpful for you is going to be dependent on how many you already have. But, again, there's synergy here, because what do the good gut bacteria thrive on? They thrive on the foods that I recommend, the healthier proteins filled with omega-3s, the vegetables and the whole fruits. What do the bad guys, the bad gut bacteria, what do they like to eat? Sugar. So you will increase. So it's not just taking the probiotic and that's going to make serotonin magically, because if you're eating a standard American diet, it's almost like the probiotics are useless, because all of those good gut bacteria that you're implanting, they're going to die, because all of the sugar and the flour, those are feeding the bad guys, increasing the bad gut bacteria. So you really want to put all of these strategies together, and really they work. I always say there's this concept that I call health math, where 1 + 1 equals 5 and 1 + 1 + 1 equals 100. So the more healthy things you do, so let's say probiotics plus exercise plus intermittent fasting, they, it's not like you're going to get the benefit of just one. They start to multiply, right? But this, by the way, the same thing is true for health risks. So people who tend to smoke and they're inactive, those health risks start to multiply. So it's like remember like in math when you said, okay, let's square the square, 2 squared or 2 cubed, they start to multiply in that way. So the more healthy behaviors you do for yourself, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of intermittent fasting, all of the things that I'm going to teach you how to do in my book. I even have a chapter on hypnosis for weight loss and the sugar brain fix. You put
I've always wondered about that.
That's my book, Your Subconscious Brain Can Change Your Life. And my buddy, Dr. Amen, who I guess is your guest tomorrow, he actually scanned my brain while I was using my own protocol, this hypnosis protocol. So, it's again, putting all of these strategies piece together to really create the most robust response.
When we're talking about the power of the probiotics, whoops, what just happened to, here's Bernadette Henke. I drink 1 kombucha a day now, and I have a hairstylist, makeup artist. He swears by kombucha.
Yeah.
Is that kind of probiotic?
Yeah, it is. It's going to really, again, another thing.
It's developed.
Yeah. And I love, I saw one of the comments that popped up, Debbie, during COVID, she said that she followed my program for 2 months and was feeling so much better. But now during, this quarantine, she kind of wasn't able to get a lot of those foods. And, first of all, I'm so glad that you felt better, Debbie. That's just incredible. And it just speaks to the power of food as medicine, and just how quickly, because I also saw another comment pop up, when are we going to feel this? People are going to feel better in 28 days. The woman who followed my program, who was featured on the Tamron Hall show with me, she lost a lot of weight in 28 days and felt so much better. And I have to tell you, one of the most exciting things for her, and this, after the show, I took her to lunch with her granddaughter, and I cried at lunch because she told me that before I think she's definitely in her 60s, before the sugar brain fix. And by the way, her husband is a physician, so she knows a lot about health, but it's one of those things, it's like, but how do you put these things together and how do you actually do it? So, my program, before committing to my program, she read the whole book. She said, okay, this program makes sense. I'm going to commit to doing it. And she told me that before following my program, she needed a cane to get around, because again, all of those foods, the inflammation, that's going to wreak havoc on your joints. When it comes to RA, rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease, all of these foods in the American diet are increasing our risk of autoimmune disorders like Hashimoto's disease and attacking your own thyroid. And when you don't have enough thyroid hormone, your metabolism goes down because you don't have enough T3 and T4. So she told me that she no longer needs the cane to get around because of this program, because of what and it's not me, it's what she did, right? And that brought tears to my eyes. And guess what she did that day? Her and her daughter spent the whole day walking around Manhattan, seeing the World Trade Center, the Chelsea Market. I gave them a little map of where, to hit all of the sites. And that was something that she would not have been able to do before this program. And then, some of the things that you talk about all the time, Joan, this quality of life, not your lifespan, because a lot of baby boomers, they're going to have a long lifespan. Yeah. How about your health span, right? Yeah. We want your quality of life to be good. And we just want, one day, if you can pass peacefully in your sleep at 99, but, your health span and your lifespan are, equal your whole life, that is a great life.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That is the goal.
Somebody asked, how important is it to buy organic?
So, I really recommend that when it comes to animal products, it's vital. It is vital for 2 reasons. Number one, you don't want all those antibiotics in your food, especially in terms of all of these, the huge numbers of autoimmune disorders, especially in Caucasian women, are the highest risk group for autoimmune disorders. So, you're eating all these antibiotics that wrecks your gut. It increases intestinal permeability. And that is, again, the source of your immune system. Also, according to the research, this groundbreaking research that I sort of base my book off of, we know that non-organic meats, so that includes milk, dairy, eggs, chicken. If you're not buying the organic, the grass-fed, or pastured, one of those labels, that has more, the omega-6 content is higher in the factory farm. If you buy the cheapest chicken at the grocery store, that's going to have, number one, a lot of hormones, a lot of antibiotics. Number two, higher levels of omega-6s. That causes inflammation. That shrinks your brain. That has an implication for all sorts of diseases, from cancer to diabetes to, you name it. So now when it comes to fruits and vegetables, it doesn't always have to be organic. What I recommend, I think I have it in this book. I know it's in my other 2 books, but you can go to the environmental working group, and, this is always changing. So actually the better list is the online list, because it changes every month. And you want to look at the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So anything on the Dirty Dozen, the fruits and vegetables on that list. So berries are almost always on that list. So that's why whenever I say blueberries, I always say organic blueberries, because blueberries are notoriously dirty when they're not organic. But there are other fruits that you'll probably find on the Clean 15 list that you don't have to buy organic. So things like bananas. And when you think about a banana, and if there's pesticide sprayed, it goes on the skin and then you peel the skin off and you eat it. So that makes sense, right? But usually if we're talking about like apples that you want to bite into, you don't want to get rid of the skin because that's where the fiber is. So I would say, like, if it's an apple or a berry, organic. If it's like a banana, and just, go to that environmental working group and check it out and take a picture of it on your phone. And then when you go to the grocery store, pull up that picture on your phone in the produce section so that okay, right. Because everybody reads the list and they forget. So use the camera feature on your phone.
And you talked about lycopene and the importance of it. The other day we did a spot. I was in the kitchen and I did things with watermelon. And watermelon has a ton of lycopene. So is that an okay? And it's also a great source of hydration, but not in the water form. And, and I've talked about how water is different when you have a fruit and you consume it's different on a cellular level than just down in a glass of water, right?
It is. And, there's something else that's really amazing in the brain. When you take the time to chew something like watermelon, there's something that happens in the brain, and it's why mindful eating practices, when you do something like a very simple exercise, every food that you eat, put it on a real plate, put the plate on the table, sit down at the table, because when you eat mindfully in that way, research shows that people eat less. Why is that? Well, the chewing time is sending signals to your brain that correlate with satiety. Again, the memory, remember, people with dementia, they tend to eat more and they tend to eat more often. So by that, according to that research, what we want to do is we want to really be encoding the memory. We really want to immerse ourselves mindfully in that experience of eating. That helps us to eat less. When we eat mindlessly, it's not just what you eat, it's also how you eat. So when we eat mindlessly, you are more likely to eat more. So if you eat something, and even if you get takeout, a lot of people are, using these apps to get food delivery. If it comes in a container, just take it out of the container, put it on a plate, turn off your phone, or put it to the side for 45 minutes and just sit at a table. And that in and of itself is automatically going to help you to eat less.
Just a couple of more questions. What about oatmeal? I know it lowers your cholesterol. Does oatmeal, though, raise your sugar?
It does. I think oatmeal in general is a fairly healthy food. I think there are a lot of other foods that are much more effective at lowering cholesterol. When you eat all of this produce and you have all of that fiber, what it does to your lipids and your cholesterol levels is just incredible. Or fiber supplements. That being said, oatmeal is going to spike your blood sugar and take you out of the fasted state. Is it okay to have oatmeal with organic blueberries? Absolutely. That's a very healthy meal. But, maybe, my program, you gradually learn how to integrate intermittent fasting. So maybe you're going to have that on Monday, but then on Tuesday, you're going to skip the meal entirely. You're just going to have some water or black coffee, and you're going to go for your run or your elliptical training sort of session. And then you're going to be burning off all of that belly fat. So, maybe on Monday you have the oatmeal, and then Tuesday you're not going to have anything at all.
Here's somebody saying, what about cantaloupe? We are diabetic and our doctor said not to eat it.
So, diabetes is a special situation. So, you do have to, pay attention. If you have any recommendations, if you have a food sensitivity, if you're diabetic, if you're vegan, you can take all of those existing food templates and you can layer them onto my program. So I'm not saying, if your doctor told you to not eat this because you're diabetic, or, you have celiac disease or non-celiac gluten sensitivity, then obviously you always want to follow those recommendations, but then also integrate the strategies that I lay out in my book as well.
Let me get one last question here from Jane Jenner. She's 50 years old, 54, mild cognitive impairment and memory is worsening. Can this help, taking out the sugar? Can this help me delay dementia?
Absolutely. So it will slow the progression. A lot of people, once people are diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, we want to prevent people from that point of no return, right? But a lot of older people have that mild cognitive impairment, which a lot of times will progress into dementia. But there's, for me, that's like, oh, it's not a bad thing. It's this means that I just really have to pull out all the stops and do everything, because this is something that I'm already experiencing problems with. So we want to really bring down your fasting blood sugar, your fasting insulin with some intermittent fasting. Again, remember, Alzheimer's and dementia, it's diabetes type 3. It is so associated with you spiking your blood sugar. And we know that intermittent fasting is the best thing that we can do to lower our blood sugar levels. Intermittent fasting in some forms even reverses diabetes. So we know that this is probably one of the best things. In terms of MCI, we also want to have a lot of organic blueberries. We want to have a lot of turmeric, these 2 power brain foods that can kind of turmeric, actually, I think of turmeric like a shield for your brain. In test tube studies, they put, when you put turmeric in a brain, it actually prevents the accumulation of those plaques. You want to, and lifestyle medicine, we also want to sleep 8 hours, because, at night, our brain cells expand, and there's like this dishwasher self-cleaning cycle, and the plaques get hosed down, and that's much more effective when you're sleeping. So when you don't sleep 8 hours and you get by on 4 or 6, you're missing out on that
still in there
cycle, So again,
that's that brain fog.
Yeah, that's right. So you want to put all of these strategies together to really make sure that you are really slowing that progression of mild cognitive impairment.
And remember, everyone, not only did he say it would slow the progress of the dementia, but also of that, why did I come into this room?
Right, that's right. This, as my grandpa calls it, his senior moments.
It's not just the beginning. It's not necessarily the beginning of dementia. It's your normal cognitive decline. But as Dr. Mike told us today, we can reverse that. We can change that. We can create neurogenesis, get out, take those walks. You said what? That getting out and walking can reduce our risk of dementia by half?
Yeah, is that incredible?
Those are the amazingly wonderful statistics, and that's the great news. Dr. Mike, I'm so happy that we had you on today again. Everyone's asking. It's the Sugar Brain Fix, the 28-day plan to quit craving the foods that are shrinking your brain and expanding your waistline. And we all are aware of how that happens, especially when you hit, that you're a woman, especially you hit that, over 50 or so, it really does start happening. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
And you can see, everyone, with all this information, why I said I've read one or two of your books twice. It's nutrient dense in information, but I really wanted to understand it all. So thank you. I personally thank you for helping me understand the brain better.
Thank you.
Right. Thank
all the work
you
you
so
do.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Tomorrow's Thursday. And Dr. Mike Dow mentioned that we have Dr. Daniel Amen on tomorrow. This guy has here, let me show you. I mean, I don't have all of his books, but I've got this many of them. Look at this. This guy has written so many books. This is just like a few of them that I've gotten. Change Your Life, Change Your Brain. For kids, Change Your Life, Change Your Grades. Healing Anxiety and Depression. Feel Better, Fast, and Make It Last. This is his latest one, The End of Mental Illness, talking about how neuroscience and this brain imaging is really changing the world of mental health. So we're going to talk with him also about how our brain works, and we're going to learn more tomorrow. Isn't this great, learning so much and learning how the foods we eat, what kind of effect that has on our bodies and on our brain. It's been great. Have a great rest of the day. This is a hump day. Let's get over it. I'll see you tomorrow, Thursday. Namaste, everyone. Stay safe.